Hi, today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a teardown on one of these Samsung Galaxy LED covers. It's not the view cover with the clear window, this is the LED one. It has a LED panel in it. I'll just bring it up so I can see it illuminates just a series of dot matrix of LEDs. When you've got it plugged in, it'll display a sequence of the charge, and when somebody calls you, it'll grow. It has a little icon come flashing up on the screen here. It's a kind of gimmicky thing, but I quite like them. I've had several. I've had about 5 now. They do break, which is why I wanted to repair it. You can see how they light up. Just to give you an idea of the time, you can just press the button at any time and it tells you the time. So today what I'm going to be doing is pulling one to pieces. And the one I'm going to use is the one I'm going to pull to pieces is this one. It's broken, doesn't work. So without any further messing about, let's start tearing this thing to pieces and see what it is that's actually broken. Right, I'm not doing very well trying to get into this. It's quite well stuck down. I don't really want to use too much brute force, although it's broken. If I use too much brute force, I'm just going to damage what I want to look at, which isn't ideal. Right, I think I might have to try warming it up with the heat gun. Right, I've applied some heat with the heat gun, and I've discovered underneath here is a little board, quite well hidden under a sticky label. Partron HD LED cover. Interesting. Let's try a spudger. Try a nice thick, kind of like levery spudger. Right, okay, yeah, I can see just in this area here there is 2 wires there, and there's 2 more here, so presumably there is some kind of coil at that point there. It's well sealed down. There is a flat flex under there as well, which I suspected there would be. And there we have quite a complex little board. There's a there we go. There's a little tiny quick connector which goes to the flat flex, and that obviously flat flex there obviously goes through the hinge. It's very small, so I suspect it's rather vulnerable to damage. I must admit it's well sealed in. There's quite a lot of sealing material in there. That's broken it. I'm not too worried, it's broken anyway. There's a really interesting little device just there. I'm not sure what it is, but it's encapsulated, but it's encapsulated in a clear resin, which is unusual. Normally I use the black epoxy that you can't see through, but it's quite pretty to look at close up, that. Right, let's see if I can get into the rest of it. I'm not sure how to do this. I'm just going to cutty with the knife. I can't imagine it goes over, although it does sound like I've just cut through cables. There's that sound of kind of like transformer windings being cut. This is quite strong material. It's some sort of vinyl. It's got reinforcing material in it. It's clearly designed to give quite a good service life. Hopefully the sound that I felt, or the fibres that I felt cutting, weren't a coil, but were just the fibres of this material. Right, oh no, I did cut the cable, I think. It is incredibly strong, very well stuck down with some kind of adhesive. It reminds me very much of like car trim material, you know, the vinyl stuff that they put on car trim. And actually it's probably glued down with a similar sort of glue. It's certainly pretty. Right, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to come back once I've got into it. Right, I've taken it apart. It's obviously using the NFC on the phone. It's using a large loop here, and then there's a secondary loop just here. Not entirely sure of the function of the loops. Presumably one is a control loop which sends the data, because it displays the time and various functions on the LEDs. I'm guessing this small one here is sending the data, and then the larger one here is sending the actual current to drive the LEDs. Now this is interesting because this one actually drops underneath. You can see some little tiny wires just there, and it's then on the underside and then under this coil here, and then pops up again on here. And I can see some more wires just there and here. So it's quite an interesting little thing. It does actually say on there Hero Revision 3 12x12 overlap. I'm curious to put the meter on it, see if I can pull some NFC off of my phone and see if I can put the meter on and see what actually is being powered here. That would be quite interesting. Right, there are some test pads on here, I've noticed, just on this section here. Right, just here. I don't know if the phone's going to focus on that. No, it won't focus on that quite. Right there, zoom in a little bit. Come on, focus. J control, TCK, whole bunch of letters, SCL, and then you've got VDD 3 volt ground and NFC PWR power, and VDDN, so potentially VDD enable perhaps. I shall put some little wires onto it and see if I can get anything on my multimeter. I don't have a scope at the minute, so it seems to be gone wrong, so I'll just have to see what I can find out with just a plain old multimeter. Right, I've soldered a couple of croc clip leads, can't speak, and I'm going to put my phone upside down. I'm hoping that the NFC will still work through. I've set the multimeter to 20 volts, and I'll see what happens. Well, there's nothing there at the minute, is there? Let's press the button on the phone to wake it up. No, nothing. That's curious. Nope, just hunting. Let's put it to millivolts. Still nothing. Perhaps the phone has to be installed. Let me just... Right, slight change of plan. I've put 2 wires on onto the board. I'm going to put a label over there just to protect my phone. I don't really want to scratch the back of my phone. I shall stick my phone in and see what happens. Now I know it doesn't work, which is the whole reason that I've replaced it. But I'm curious as to see if actually it produces any voltage at all. Yes, it does produce half a volt. Well, at least it did produce half a volt. Yes. And I don't think it looks like a capacitor is discharging, doesn't it? Right, just touching the screen then, it pumped up to 1.3 volts. So it appears that it does take power straight from the NFC on the phone. Even though, interesting enough, the NFC actually isn't active on my phone. I don't leave it on. But obviously it has its own separate drive circuits for this cover. Let's do a little bit more probing and see what I can find. Right, I've tried connecting to all the connections that I can find here, and it's still giving peaks at about 1.1 volts when you press the button on the phone. Now obviously there are some data lines here. You can just about make out the data lines, and this is the control coil. It's just on the back here, it's just called L1 and L2, and then this one says NFC 1 and NFC 2. That's where your flat flex goes out on the rather broken connector. I see why it broke now. I see there's some sticky on there, so it's obviously bonded so to stop you from taking it apart. And this rather interesting device here, I have no idea what that is, but it's this thing here. It's really very pretty. It has some very interesting kind of like you can actually see the chip. So you can actually see the device in there. You can see the silicone wafer, which is very nice. And then you've got these 2 8-leg devices here, and the rest is just diodes, possibly Zenas, I expect. Perhaps there to clamp voltage. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 diodes, a whole bunch of caps. That one there not populated, and there's one there not populated. It's an interesting little device. I'm going to see if I can dig in to find out what the LEDs are like now. But what is curious is after I disconnected it from the phone, it was still showing 0.3 volts for some time. So these caps hold their charge quite well. Presumably that's just so that the phone, if it gives a slight drop in power, it means that this will still be powered from the caps there. And they look like they're all in parallel, those. So they're all, yeah, it's possible that actually these 2 here aren't. That one there and that one there, and then that one is separate as well. But all of those are in parallel, and then those are in parallel. So yeah, it's using it as a reservoir. There's some not populated there as well. Interesting little board. I'm going to dig in and see what the LEDs are like now. I'm curious about the touch, because it's got a touch sensor in there. So I'm going to have a look at that now. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all the way around the edge here. I know there's a magnet there I can feel that. That's for the phone. It must have a hall sensor in it, so that it knows that the cover is shut. See how much of this stuff I can get off without removing a finger. I don't really want to cut through the flat flex if I can. Right, I'm going to pause the video and come back when I've got that off. Quite an interesting construction, this. You've got just lock focus. You've got, there's your magnet. It's of course stainless steel, so it's not going to magnetise to it. And that's not either. Knife will magnetise to it. Yes, definitely a magnet. This material here is where your card holder is. It's got an interesting kind of really slippery, almost feels like Teflon liner on the inside. Presumably that's to stop your card from snagging. But yeah, it's really slippery. And then I can see the flat flex goes under at this point here, and it goes under what looks like a net material. Yes, there it is. You're seeing this at the same time that I am. Right, there we go. There's an LED panel. Whole bunch of test points on there. Obviously in production they just use pogo pins on these and make sure they light up. Interestingly, my latest cover, as I say, this one I think is number 3. The one on my phone's number 4, and I bought another one as number 5. They don't have a particularly long life. If you imagine how many times you open and close your phone every day, then yeah, this poor old flat flex gets quite tugged about. Right, let's see if I can extract that from there. I don't really want to ruin my tweezers, but I think it's going to come out fairly easy. Doesn't look like it's that. Oh, you can see the back of the LED. Oh no, I can't. There, it's got a whole bunch of wires. I'm assuming that's for the touch sensor. It's obviously a capacitive touch sensor. Again, this has got VDD, touch SL, touch SCL, touch SDA, NFC CRL, touch init. Well, that's obviously initialize. It's quite interesting, quite clever. These Koreans are clever people, aren't they? Being Samsung, a Samsung product, I suspect this is a genuine part. I suspect it is probably made in Korea. It sounds like there's a bit of thunder rumbling outside, which is unusual. Here we go. Right, so all the LEDs appear to be underneath the touch sensor, which would make sense. There's 3 separate planes there, 3 separate little panels, and it's just a dot matrix of tiny LEDs. And it's right, I've done an autopsy. It has split at this point here where I would have expected. I'll see if we can get a little closer picture of that. That is kind of where I would have expected it to split. It's broken. I'm not going to bother trying to fix it. I might play with this LED panel, see if I can get any life out of that. But in the real world, there's no point in even trying to fix something like this. you can buy these covers for around £14 for my Galaxy S7. So it's just not worth any time at all trying to fix it. You just throw it away and buy another one. But I hope you found that interesting. I did. It's I was kind of expecting it to be of a similar design. Didn't realise there'd be quite so much custom packages in it. But I guess if you want to miniaturise these things to do a specific job, you have to use huge amounts of integration. I still think that device there is very pretty with its glistening. Very unusual. Normally they're encapsulated in black epoxy, but that one is using clear epoxy. But there you go. If you liked this sort of stuff, then give us a like or subscribe. I do occasionally tear down bits and pieces like this, so it's always worth watching.